Okay, so speaking about something else, one more temple. Okay. That's fine. No, then, well then.
This weather's perfect for a little exploring.
Um, and then is here. Daily.
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward. My dream seems to have become a reality.
I got you.
Perfect timing.
It's
A
showtime.
little reward. Why struggle?
Okay, so current HP. Crit rate plus 19. 88 plus 19 plus 106.
Rest in peace. You asked for it. Into the frozen abyss. That's as far as you go. The story's fun. Noise began. Oh, my turn then. Ready?
Like a shadow.
Let's cool things down. Now, little cuties, crush them! Let's break the ice. I knew it wouldn't be that easy.
Two little stars float by.
Watch out!
I'm scary and fierce. Faithful companions, heed my call. Wanna play a game?
As foreshadowed. Why struggle? Rest in peace. Here we go. Oh, my turn then. The moment.
Pretty, right?
Let's cool things down. The next page is the ending. The story ends here, into the frozen abyss. Don't worry, one swing will do. You asked for it. Now, bloom aside.
Oh, 12.
about a little late-night adventure?
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
The last one. Okay, so
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
12, 11, 12. Seriously? Like special also needs?
My
Oh.
dream seems to have become a reality.
Let's go to 11, 6.
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
Pretty cool, huh?
That's as far as you go. Noise, be gone. Don't worry, one swing will do.
Two little stars.
You asked for it. Into the frozen abyss. Yeah. Why struggle? Echoes rest in peace. That's as far as you go.
That's a lot of damage comparatively.
is sealed. Shatter.
It's showtime!
Let despair fester.
Concentrate. Obliterate form and spirit. As decreed.
By a thousand
The stage is mine!
Disappointing. The moment. Take this. Your life is here. No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward. My dream seems to have become a reality.
Come on. Isolde is so cool. Shame she died. She didn't have to die. She could have become a recurring character. Like technically, fuck, the dude from... Where the fuck is he? He was in the outer ring. He got taken in by Section 6, at least. They talked to him in a really stern manner.
My dream seems to have become a reality.
So with my current situation, I can't use.
Fufu's here.
No matter
Fun
where we go,
is
meeting
already
you
used.
is the real reward.
Wish you one. Monato. Fun. Hmm. I got nothing from my show today. Hmm.
The wind's so strong today. Even the trash can lids flew off.
When in doubt, quantum mechanics. Not sure if this is the one that I want.
How about a little late night adventure? I promise you'll.
No matter where we go, meeting.
I'm at your disposal.
That's not the set that I want to use on him. That's not it. Like, what does this set even do? More days is not really it. This one requires quick assist, and he can't do quick force quick assists, and this team doesn't really have much quick assists to begin with. This set, chain attack or ultimate. Okay, I think I want this. And maybe this, confirm filter. Crit rate, please. No. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Let's go like this. Attack percent. Great. Crit rate 2 times, attack once. Yeah. Okay, that's reasonably fine. Okay. Hmm. Took retreat. Monk retreat. Took retreats. 2 attacks. Crit damage, please. Oh. Crit rate, please. Oh. Straight. No. Great. Retreat. No flat HP. Retreat. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean. At least that's attack percent. Come on, give me 2 retreats. Attacks. Retreat. Wow. It's the second one. Like that. Okay, well. $161. I'm not sure if he wants impact here. Also, I'm not sure if I want this actually. Maybe I want this. energy regen. Ooh. Come on, give me more crit. Wrong kind of crit. Sheesh. Hmm. Attack percent. Here we go. Well, that's 4 substats at least. Now, I'm currently at 45% crit rate, which is not enough. I need more crit rate. Here we go. Ooh, that's nice. Oh, that's already enough, so just something that's not worse. This can get worse, but not necessarily will.
I shall follow your orders.
Oh. You know what, let's deploy. And then we'll think about upgrades. Oh wait, no. Aspetta.
In position.
Perfect timing. A little reward. You asked for it. Into the frozen abyss. Yeah. That's as far as you go. Rest in peace. Noise, be gone. Now, little cuties, crush them! Don't worry, one swing will do. Let's see you handle this.
Reverse shockwave!
How about I smash it?
Time to
Let me help you chill out. Let's break the ice into the frozen abyss. The story ends here. Rest in peace. Are you ready for this? Watch out!
Thanatos Storm! Wanna play a game? The name of the night, emissary!
I'll bite your throat out.
How about I smash it?
Reverse shockwave!
Let me help you chill out. You will rest amidst the ice. Ice is cracking. Noise, be gone. Here we go. Why struggle? Into the frozen abyss. You asked for it. Rest in peace. That's as far as you go. Noise, be gone. Into the frozen abyss. How about I smash it?
Thanatos Storm!
As foreshadowed. Let's break the ice. The next page is the ending.
Okay. Something like that. This is bullshit.
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
I'm at your disposal. I shall follow your orders.
Good evening. Today's special is the electric margarita with bluesy undertones. The joy that this delicious composition brings is truly remarkable. Ah, leaving so soon.
My dream seems to have become a reality.
I shall follow your orders.
Okay. Come on, double crit rate. Okay. That's pretty fucking good. Hmm. Come on, give me more crit rate. Nope. Only crit damage. Hmm. Give me more. Flat defense. Still, that's technically not the worst. This is much worse. This can be better, technically. Wait. 48.2% crit rate. Okay, guess I have to use this one. Then because this is not good enough. .6% crit rate.
I shall follow your orders.
Yay. Now the question is, what will I use here? What if I just use maybe team? Defensive assist hit. And to complete it with me everything.
Suddenly reflecting on battles past. Oh, I forgot the next line. Really? You're excited too? Suddenly reflecting on battles
Best and worst
past.
named elements.
Oh, I forgot the next line.
What is the best and the worst element on the periodic table?
My colleague Dick Pullum used to say that potassium was evil, but it's Neil's favourite element. I really like to think this question comes with a name, and I think the most beautiful name for an element is Colombian. Element 41, which is now called niobium, and the worst name for any element is number 111, Röntgenium. I have nothing against Röntgen, but pronunciation of his name is a tongue twister for anyone who's not German.
Academia seems like a career that is contracting rather than expanding. How can people who want to be scientists justify pursuing this career?
I think you're initial assumption
I
is
swear
completely
on my
wrong.
blade.
The number of people studying chemistry, not only here in the UK but across the world, is increasing enormously. So we need more and more people to teach chemistry. And so I think there is a real need to educate people,
No,
not just
my
to do
trust
research,
okay.
but for all the applications of chemistry that you rely on, giving you safe drinking water, disposing of your sewage and so on.
Oh, for Lord's sake.
But I don't think that
In the name of
there's any need to justify being an academic. Of course, doing research is important to discover new things that might benefit mankind, but as the physicist Richard Feynman said, the only justification of researchers is the fact that we're teaching younger generations about our subject.
What is something you've always wanted to do for periodic videos but have never had a chance to do it yet?
What I really want to do is to see metallic plutonium. But sometimes we've got slightly close to it, but nobody trusts me or Brady enough to let us near plutonium. We've seen plutonium in solution, and it's a most beautiful colour, at least plutonium-free, but I would like to see some plutonium metal. And then niobium, there was a problem because the Americans called it columbium, the Europeans called it niobium, and there was a sort of trade-off. It was agreed the Americans would call it niobium if the Germans and the Europeans would call wolfram tungsten.
Stay away from me. The cold is silent. Shadowless blade. Oh, for Lord Satan! Music is the rhythm of life. The cold is silent. What an eyesore. I see it.
Okay. We can just do that sometimes. Nice. That's a pretty good buff. And it's not limited to attack. So I guess it was pretty useful. If I want to use this buff, I should use this one. Well, since I'm here, might as well. I want to play Sukaku Karate. Now the question is, what engine would be ideal for her?
My dream seems to have become a reality.
I am the Eye of Obel.
Mm-hmm. Fufu is also here. Yeah. Wait. The ice damage resist decrease stacks, right? So wait, no, I don't know. How much can I even get from it? Mm-hmm. Hits a stunned enemy, so it doesn't really matter if he's the one that triggers the stun. What about Chinyi? Where's she? Oh. Words. So she needs lots of impact. Oh. This is fine. Not fine at all. Come on, crit rate. damage. This is exists. Why do I bother? Come on, give me great stats. Crit rate to the max. Give me even more crit rate. Defense percent. That's not bad. Ooh. This one can be great. Well, still crit rate, crit damage. That's not bad. The percent. Good damage. Straight. I mean, still might be good for someone. It's literally the same. Give me a more crit rate. Give me more crit rate. Oh. Уйди, я скучаю по тебе. Секундочку, сделаем так. So that's already enough. So just choose the one that has the nicest substats. Just with crit rate base. Crit damage. Damage. Oh, at least it went once. 83.6% crit damage. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Damage. Nice. More crit damage, please. It's fine. It could have been better, but it's not. That's totally fine.
A new case to solve?
Okay, 2 ice squads. I need to migrate my old squads to the bottom. Хорошо.
No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
Is it time to clock out?
Let me finish my cup of hot water.
Only the brave will win. That's me!
Гулливер? Ой, Гулливер. Needs HSO. But that's not H. But there's no free HSO here. Okay, so Formasa. Set.
Need something?
Let me finish my cup of hot water.
Only the brave will win. That's me!
Oh. There's no space bar. So Squad 11 has to stay here. Okay. How is it black?
My dream seems to have become a reality.
Touch me.
I'm at
1, 2, yes, all accounted for.
Time for some dip.
I shall follow your orders.
We fighting? Take me.
Okay, Miyabi, Mono Ice. Maybe I should go for first to Miyabi, third for, you know, Ratorban.
My dream seems to have become a reality.
Miyabi.
This is the path I follow.
I shall follow your orders.
Nice.
Sokaku, ready. staples of the Timefield family.
Where's my favorite?
Let's fire it up!
Okay, so a regular Miyabi. It's Miyabi.
Eradicate all evil. Good day, Lord Phaeton.
And Astra.
Take a deep breath. I'm curious to see the audience's reaction.
Mm. Rotorban.
Eradicate all evil.
Here's the rot. Oh,
I'm at your disposal.
Is it work time? Is food included? Don't frighten me like that! Where are we going? There's no class today. Want a glass of nitro fuel?
dingy there.
Huh?
To be fair, maybe.
Only the brave will win. That's me! Take a deep breath. I'm curious to see the audience's reaction.
Okay, so Nagasa 3 now. And
This is the path I follow.
The end.
Good day, Lord Phaeton.
Nag.
You have my complete
If you need help, call me anytime.
Headmaid Rena, at your service.
It's because all of them are from 3 different divisions. No for tentacles.
Tsukashiro Yanagi.
A mission? Take me along.
1, 2, yes, all accounted for. No matter where we go, meeting you is the real reward.
Boom.
I'm at your disposal.
This weather's perfect for a little exploring.
But honestly, I'm not sure. Wait, that's not healing. It's not direct healing. Chain attack, bamboo chain. But I don't use bamboo chain attacks. I don't need attack. What do you do? Should you just use that?
What the? Dun. Huh? Dun.
No, there's no Yankee Summit. I'm not sure. This increases just energy regen and all of that. And that's kind of bullshit. Oh. At least both ruptures are close together, though, I suppose. Could just move it up a bit. Oh no, SL1 squad is not something that I need to worry about.
Awaiting further instructions.
Because I can just...
Yeah, I guess this outfit ain't too bad. The blue bandages are kinda annoying, though. Never mind.
Still haven't given him everything he deserves. Yo. Yo. So good. Just give me more of the things that I want. Give me more crit damage. Not defense percent. Very good substats. Sheesh. Sheesh. Very good substats. Maximum. Very good substats. Very good substats. That HP. Not bad. Double crit. Open.
Yeah, I guess this outfit ain't too bad. The blue bandages are kinda annoying, though. Never mind.
Good day, Proxy. This weather's perfect for a little exploring.
Does anyone actually want to use her? The field stunners are really cool, especially ones that also give some stuff. want to give Qingyi at least a shine. Rightly. Okay, never mind. Oh. Something like that. Boy.
It's right there.
Dysprosium. 16 years ago we made our first video about dysprosium.
You can see we've got a very thin foil sample of dysprosium.
It was rather a boring element then, and it's really gone up in the popularity scale and it's now become really quite important technologically and also in fundamental science.
Don't underestimate.
In the original video, Pete found a small sample of dysprosium sheet in a drawer in our store downstairs.
I see it.
This wonderful sample of dysprosium.
So Neil and I went down to look for the sample that Pete had got.
Oh, Lord,
It was gone. Someone must have taken it for their experiment without admitting it because it's quite expensive metal. Fortunately, our friend Anthony Lippman and his collaborators in the company G. Chapman have provided us with two really nice samples, in fact 3 pieces of metal and also a lump of so-called dendritic dysprosium metal where it has crystallized in a sort of fibrous form which looks really good, and it was too nice to try and destroy chemically, so I'm going to keep it to display. We're going to show you some really quite nice reactions of the metal, but before that we're going to talk about its magnetic properties. Dysprosium is one of the so-called rare earth elements, and it's in the periodic table above californium, the very radioactive element, but surprisingly it's attracted to magnets really quite strongly. Neil has a very powerful small magnet, and with his magnet he managed to lift up the larger lump of dysprosium right off the table. He also took some filings of dysprosium metal. You know we tend to use a file to form finely divided metal, and he could move the filings round on a sheet of paper with his magnet underneath. I quite like that, but the exciting chemistry and magnetism we'll get to in a minute. Dysprosium metal dissolves quite easily in hydrochloric acid, and Neil and Brady had quite a lot of fun. Bubbles away, release of hydrogen, and the dysprosium chloride that's formed is completely soluble in water or weak acid. Fortunately, we didn't have to use that solution for our reactions because my colleague Peter Harvey lent us a whole bottle of dysprosium chloride which he was using for magnetic experiments. And so we had a nice solution of dysprosium chloride, and we filled a whole series of test tubes to try different reactions. The first reaction was with carbonate solution, and you get a nice precipitate of dysprosium carbonate. It's white. Most of the salts of the rare earth elements are colorless. We then tried the hydroxide. And we got another precipitate that was white, but it looked slightly different. What chemists call slightly gelatinous, more like a jelly.
Sulfide.
Then we tried the sulfide.
This video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. My life revolves around motorcycle engines. I currently have 6 of them, which seems like a lot, especially considering I only own 2 motorcycles. I have owned a number of motorcycles, but also cars with motorcycle engines, including the world's fastest car powered by a naturally aspirated 1-liter. Motorcycle engines are amazing. The power density you can get out of them is more than most multi-million-dollar supercars. They are basically full-blown race car engines for just a few $1,000s. And I am in the middle of disassembling one, so I thought this would be a good time to talk about why they are so amazing and why they make so much power.
Struggle. Echoes in the deep.
Say no more.
Before we talk about why motorcycle engines make a lot of power, we have to talk about how engines make power. Combustion requires fuel and oxygen. The fuel you get from the gas station, the oxygen you get from the air around you. A piston engine is an air pump. It pulls in fresh air from the world around it, mixes that with fuel, and then ignites it in a combustion chamber. This combustion creates a high pressure that pushes down on the piston. The combustion is doing work by moving the piston. The faster the engine spins, the more work you can do in a given time. Work per unit time is power. So there are 2 ways to make more power: more combustions per minute or more work per combustion. More combustions per minute is just revolutions per minute, or RPM, just spinning the engine faster. More work per combustion can be done a few different ways. The lazy way is displacement. If you make a giant 10-cylinder 8-liter engine, you don't need to do any actual engineering to make power because you're pulling in so much air and fuel. You could also use a smaller engine with a turbocharger to shove more air in there. Or you could do it the hard way. Engineering.
I am ready.
Motorcycles do it the hard way. Early piston engines were pretty bad at efficient combustion. The airflow had a tortuous path to get from the carburetor to the combustion chamber and again to get back out the exhaust. It took a while for engine designers to realize that air has mass and therefore momentum and would really prefer to travel in a straight line. Car engines do this these days, but motorcycles are really good at it. You can see this progression in engine design over the years. Motorcycle engine designers also realized a long time ago that you can fit 4 circles inside a circle better than you can fit 2. 4 valves gives more area and more airflow than 2. A lot of modern car engines do this, but this has been common on motorcycles for a long time. There is another advantage of 4 valves that I'll get into in a minute, but this better airflow path and increased airflow is part of what makes motorcycle engines more power dense. But they also get to use this airflow better than cars do because they get to cheat a little bit. Motorcycle engines are not playing by the same rules. Motorcycles, and therefore motorcycle engines, are subject to less stringent emissions requirements than cars. They're allowed to emit more pollutants, they are tested at lower speeds, and they only have to prove that they can meet the lower limits for 18,500 miles, whereas cars have to do it for 150,000 miles. Even with the lower requirements, they still have lower carbon dioxide emissions than a car, but they do emit more smog-forming nitrogen oxides. I'll leave the arguing about whether this is a good or a bad thing to people in the comments, but the result is that a motorcycle engine can get more power out of each combustion cycle. A perfectly efficient ideal combustion will only produce carbon dioxide and water, but a real-world combustion will have unused oxygen, fuel, and other components that mix together to create oxides of nitrogen, hydrocarbons, and other bad things. In an ideal scenario, a piston engine would exhaust all of its gases at the end of its exhaust stroke and intake all new fresh air during the intake stroke, but this never happens. A high-power engine will err on the side of completely filling the cylinder with fresh air and a little extra fuel to maximize combustion pressure, ejecting some unburnt fuel and oxygen out the hot exhaust, which will mix together into all those bad things we talked about earlier. A low-emission engine will try for complete combustion and extracting as much power from as little fuel as possible, which just ends up giving less power per combustion. So if you have less stringent emissions requirements, you can make more power. But this is not the only reason that motorcycles make more power. The real cheat code here is revs. To get a car engine that revs past 11,000 RPM, you need about $3 million. But you can buy a Kawasaki Ninja 500 that spins to 13,000 RPM. In fact, for that same $3 million, you can buy 500 Kawasaki Ninja 500s. Motorcycle engines spin fast, and they do this by virtue of being small, or more specifically, being lightweight. You may know that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and objects inside a motorcycle engine tend to change directions repeatedly many times a second. The heavier something is, the more it resists changing direction, and the faster you spin an engine, the more force it takes to change the direction of the piston and the connecting rod. And at some point, the force will be enough to tear the piston and connecting rod apart. You can do 3 things to prevent this. One is making the components stronger, and motorcycle engines do this well. Pistons and connecting rods are often forged and made from high-strength alloys. You can also lower the stress on the piston by lowering the maximum piston speed. A typical car engine will have a bore and stroke that are about the same size, but a motorcycle will usually have a bore almost twice as big as the stroke. Even with the same engine size, this shorter stroke engine will be able to spin a lot faster because the stress is lower at any given RPM. This larger bore also allows for larger valves, which allows for more airflow. But a longer stroke engine will usually have lower emissions because you can get a more complete combustion. So with the lower emissions requirements of a motorcycle, they can take advantage of the higher revs you get with a shorter stroke. The last thing you can do is make things smaller. Smaller is lighter, and lighter spins faster, but smaller is also less powerful because you have less fuel and air doing combustion work. So instead, you make everything smaller, and then you make 4 of everything. Making the piston and connecting rod light and strong is an engineering challenge, but doing it with a valve string is much more difficult. To let fresh air into the engine, a camshaft pushes down on a poppet valve, and this is where the problems begin. You can accelerate a valve open pretty quickly, but valves have mass and therefore momentum. Valves rely on springs to close them, but if you open too quickly, it can ramp off the camshaft and float. Contrary to popular belief, float is not so bad on its own, but if the valve ramps too far, it becomes slamming back down, which creates a lot of impact load and could break your valve. The valve could also float too long and impact the piston. You can fix this with a stronger spring, but then you need a stronger valve and a stronger retainer, and everything is now heavier and has more momentum, and you've made everything so much worse. The only way to fix this is to make everything lighter. The first thing to do is what we've already done with the pistons. Instead of 1 intake valve per cylinder, you use 2. Now they're both lighter and can spin faster. You can do 3 intake valves, but this leads to diminishing returns and adds cost and complexity. Another thing you can do is use lightweight materials. I used to work for a company that makes valves and valve train components for racing and high-performance engines. We had some car customers like the Corvette Z06, but most of the business was racing, and a lot of it was motorcycles. This is a Formula 1 exhaust valve. It is made from titanium, has a low friction coating on the stem, and if you buy a modern sport bike or high-performance dirt bike, the valves in it will be very similar to this one and maybe even made by the same company. I have oversimplified this a bit. Camshafts don't usually press down directly on a valve. There's something in the middle. On this Hayabusa engine, that thing is these buckets. Actually, these buckets and the shims that go beneath them. The shims are all slightly different sizes to leave a specific gap between the camshaft and the bucket. This is so that when the engine gets up to temperature, everything has expanded so that there is just barely 0 gap between everything. The buckets, however, are added weight, and added weight means lower revs. A lot of the newer high-performance engines, like the BMW S1000RR, use finger followers. The camshaft presses down on the middle of the finger, and then the tip of the finger pushes down on the shim that is at the top of the valve. This adds another friction surface, but the followers are coated in DLC, or diamond-like carbon, which is very hard and very low friction. The finger followers do move, but really only half of them, and they weigh less than the buckets, so the whole moving mass is less and you can rev higher. These also have the added benefit of allowing for a more aggressive and more complex valve opening. There are other ways to get higher revs out of an engine. Formula 1 ditches the valve spring altogether and uses compressed nitrogen. There are 2 advantages to this. One is that you don't have the mass of the spring, so the whole system is lighter. The other is that the spring rate is exponential. A coil spring gives you more force as you compress it, but an air spring gives you a lot more force near maximum compression, so you get a lot of force closing the valve when you need it and a lot less when you don't. There is a third advantage in that without the spring, you don't have to worry about the resonant frequency of the spring. Everything is a spring, especially springs, and everything has a resonant frequency that it wants to vibrate at. If your valve spring has a resonant frequency that is within your RPM range, then it will see a lot more stress and can fail. One common way around this is to use 2 springs for each valve. They're both lighter and they both have different resonant frequencies outside the RPM range. You don't need a spring or even an air spring to close a valve. You can use another camshaft lobe. This is what Ducati does with the Desmodromic valve train. Desmo does have its drawbacks, as well as the Formula One pneumatic valves. With the pneumatic valves, you have to have nitrogen on the car, which is not really practical for road cars. And Ducati's maintenance intervals and maintenance complexity is a lot more than most engines. In fact, Ducati has moved away from it on some of their engines for a lower production and maintenance cost. Another great thing about motorcycle engines is how little they weigh. A 200 horsepower liter bike engine might weigh less than 150 pounds, where a 4-cylinder car engine weighs about 2.5 times that much. Part of this is that the engine displacement is less. A liter bike is 1 liter, and a car 4-cylinder will be around twice that. And there is a big advantage there. Just like with the valve train, lightweight begets lightweight. If you can make one component lighter, then everything else has less stress on it and can also be lighter, which further drops the stress and so on. But bike engines are also lighter because of the materials used. Engine case covers have been magnesium for years. Magnesium is a great material. If plastic is not enough, but aluminum is too much, magnesium is your friend. You'll see magnesium on car crossbeams and front-end carriers and sometimes on oil pans, but you see it all over high-performance motorcycle engines. A lot of sport bike engines will use aluminum bolts. I hate these bolts because they're one-time use and easy to strip out, and I'm always taking things apart and putting them back together again. But they do drop a lot of weight, especially on a bike engine that already weighs so little. Also, motorcycle engines are not just engines. They are engines with a clutch and a transmission all in one assembly. They are motorcycle powertrains. I love motorcycle transmissions because they are so simple. There are 12 gears on 2 shafts. The power comes in through the main shaft from the engine through the clutch. The clutch works just like a car clutch, except they have a dozen or so friction plates sandwiched between steel plates rather than one big friction plate. The outer part of the clutch, or the basket, always rotates with the crankshaft, just in the opposite direction. The friction plates rotate with the basket, connected with the tabs on the outside. The steel plates engage with the clutch hub, which is connected to the main shaft. There are 6 gears on the main shaft, with first gear being the smallest and 6th being the biggest. There are 6 gears on the counter shaft, or output shaft, with first being the biggest and 6th being the smallest. A motorcycle transmission is a constant mesh transmission, so the gears are always engaged with each other. First gear input is always engaged with first gear output, and so on. This works because only 4 of the gears on the input shaft rotate with the shaft, and 2 of the gears on the output shaft rotate with that shaft. All of the rest of the gears are freewheeling. The gears that rotate with the shaft do so because they are connected with splines. So when you're in neutral, the fixed gears on the input shaft are only meshed with the freewheeling gears on the output shaft and vice versa. The way you transmit power is by connecting one of the freewheeling gears to one of the splined gears. And you do this by sliding the splined gear over so that the lugs on the side engage with the holes on the freewheeling gear. Then you have a path from the main shaft to the output shaft. I love the simplicity of this. There are no synchros, no belts, no solenoids, nothing complex, just straight cut gears engaged with straight cut gears. It's lightweight, it's simple, it's fantastic. The way you slide the splined gears onto the freewheeling gears is with a fork, and the way you move the fork from side to side is with a shift barrel. The shift barrel has these tracks cut into it, and rotating the shift barrel causes the forks to move the spline gears so they are either engaged with the gear on the left, or the gear on the right, or in the middle, not connected to either. So by designing the tracks in the rotating barrel, you can engage any set of gears you want. Usually just one at a time, otherwise the transmission would explode. You probably don't want the barrel in the middle ground either. You want it exactly in the right place, and to accomplish that, there is a star-shaped thing on the end of the barrel with a spring-loaded roller. This roller pushes down into these valleys. You probably noticed there is an extra valley here. That's neutral. That's why it's always a little harder to get a motorcycle transmission in neutral than any of the other gears, because you have to give it a little half push. The barrel rotates with this little grabber that is attached to the shift lever that you move with your feet. If you've tried to shift a motorcycle while it's stopped and it won't go into gear, that's because the dogs on the sliding gear weren't lined up with the cogs on the gear it is sliding into. So you have to roll the bike back a little bit to get it into gear.
Rest in peace.
Some modern cars do have high revving engines with finger followers and lightweight components, but motorcycles have this stuff everywhere and for way less money. There are places where you can improve both power and fuel efficiency, like lighter components, lower friction coatings, and more efficient combustion. And you do see these things creeping into cars, but there's still good reasons why you can't buy a 14,000 RPM Honda Civic making 200 horsepower per liter. Remember when I said that cars were required to prove that they can pass emissions for 150,000 miles, but bikes only have to do it for 18,500 miles? Well, that's because bikes are not intended or designed to go 150,000 miles. Cars are engineered to last 150 or 200,000 miles, but bikes, especially high-performance sport bikes, are designed to maybe 30 or 40,000 miles. Every added mile adds cost. More miles is more fatigue cycles, which means more mass, more metal, better wear coatings. More mass is heavier components, which adds more stress and lowers maximum RPM. Cars also need more power than motorcycles because they're bigger. They're heavier, so they need more power to accelerate because of physics. And the aerodynamic drag is more because cars are cutting a car-sized hole through the air. Cars will generally have a better drag coefficient, but the total drag is more because they're so much bigger. The average new car has about 200 horsepower, and you can get motorcycle engines with more power than this, but they do it at higher RPM. And while driving around at 12,000 RPM is one of the most fun things about a motorcycle-powered car, the fun does wear out pretty quickly, and most people would rather cruise quietly along at 1,500 RPM. So you kind of need bigger engines to get good power lower in the RPM range. You could get the best of both worlds with 2 motorcycle engines, and there are companies that do this for race cars. My friend Robin Shute is building a race car with a Prototipo V8 that uses heads from a BMW S1000RR motorcycle. There's also the added cost. A motorcycle engine might be relatively inexpensive, but a 2-liter V8 has twice as many parts as a 1-liter 4-cylinder, so you're basically doubling the cost. Plus, the transmission is going to see twice the power and a lot more weight of a car, so the gears get heavier, the clutch gets bigger, and you've lost all the advantages of a small, lightweight, integrated gearbox. So, I get it. There are good reasons why car engines are heavier, less power dense, and less cool than motorcycle engines. I want to say that it's an absolute crime that Honda doesn't leverage its motorcycle engine expertise to designing a new S2000 that has a 2-liter V8 based on the CBR engine. But it would be a whole new engine program because, as I said before, motorcycle engines are playing to a very different set of rules for emissions and longevity. A 14,000 RPM S2000 would be amazing, but they're not going to do that because it wouldn't pass emissions, and even if it did, they wouldn't sell a car with an engine that is only designed to last 40,000 miles. Motorcycle-powered cars are better, but only if they're lightweight, and nobody makes one from the factory, which is fine. I'll just have to keep doing it myself. You may have noticed a new workbench in my office for this video. I did all the disassembly of this motorcycle engine on my new FlexiSpot E7 Plus Max standing desk. I have a different standing desk for my computer and I kind of hate it. It's not very stable, it doesn't hold very much weight, and it feels like a mild California earthquake would put all the contents on the ground. So when I decided I wanted a new workbench for my office, I looked for something better, something with 4 legs, each with its own motor, something that could easily support a motorcycle engine and a slightly overweight YouTuber, and maybe a couple of curious kittens. This is a standing desk, but it is easily robust enough to be a real workbench. That's why I got it, so I can rebuild this motorcycle engine adjusted to a comfortable height without having to worry about it collapsing.
Weird animation cancels, faster skill casts, and some without Venti even lifting a finger. A new weapon, artifact options, a ton of new combos and text to play with. I guess this is what happens when a unit from 1.0 like Venti gets the spotlight again. So in this video, I won't simply read this kit out loud, but instead showcase all my testing, a new
15k RPM trombone test.
Behind that fireball coming out of the trombone, you see 2 4-cylinder engines that are capable of revving to over 15,000 RPM, and these 2 engines are chained together. I've connected them with the special rear axle to allow them to spin at slightly different engine speeds. Getting the RPMs very close to each other but not perfectly even should create an interesting acoustic effect called beating. The other option to chain them together is via the crankshaft. This would allow it to adjust the timing of these 2 engines in such a way that they would release their exhaust pulses almost like a super high revving inline 8-cylinder. And wouldn't that be the perfect test engine for different exhaust designs in the future? But getting a chain to spin at 15,000 RPM is not for the faint-hearted. But if you're interested on working on engine projects with a shoestring budget, don't mind the abuse of musical instruments, and are not scared of failure, you've come to the right place.
This weather's perfect for a
This
little
project actually originated way back in 2015. After failing to get my V12 engine swap Nissan to sing like a Pagani Sonda, I was thinking what most people would think. It needs more RPM. Little did I understand back then about the complex exhaust resonance tuning that's required to get a V12 to sing like an old Formula 1 car.
What we now call R1FO tuning.
So instead of fixing my knowledge gap, I started hoarding these high RPM 4-cylinder engines, which were back then plentiful and cheap, especially if they were slightly broken. But the biggest issue is how do you combine those engines into one single unit? I planned on using rubber dampers to stop the harmonics from building up in such a long crankshaft, but I didn't even get that far. When I started with this project, I used carbon fiber to create a cover plate and get access to the crankshaft. These carbon fiber engine covers never stopped leaking oil from the radial shaft seal, and that was a problem I could not overcome until very recently. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In the background you see my friend Tim trying to fix his broken V12 that suffered from bearing damage by retrilling bearing shells that were made for a different engine. But let me tell you, it didn't work. In the foreground, I'm preparing one of those 4-cylinder engines for a 3D scan by a method called photogrammetry. This is where you take hundreds of photos from different angles, and with the help of some specialized software you can recreate it as a 3D model in a virtual environment. And this makes it very easy for me now to design the rest of the parts I need to complete this project. But this time I made a significant change in how the crankshafts are synchronized. Instead of transmitting the power from one end to another, I added a chain-driven check shaft. I was a little bit concerned that even a slight misalignment between the engines could cause a catastrophic engine failure.
My dream seems to have
especially at high RPM. But connecting two shafts spinning at 15,000 RPM with a chain is not exactly problem-free either. Imagine wrapping a chain around the disc of an angle grinder and letting it run at full speed, and then adding another close to 5,000 RPM to it. The centrifugal forces alone trying to rip the chain apart will be immense, but this chain should be able to handle it. Maybe. I started with the design of the sprocket adapter that would fit the snout of the crankshaft. Then I added the engine cover, the shaft seal and the bolt-on shaft seal housing. This engine mount formed a part of the checkshaft assembly. This included adjustable sprocket dials, sprocket adapters, checkshaft bearings and the bearing housing, plus some chain tensioners. On the gearbox side I added a relatively simple rear axle with some wheel hubs and bearing adapters, as well as sprocket carriers that double as differential housing. This should allow me to test the engine under load to top.
Every car engine ever explained, one cylinder. Starting off with the simplest piston engine ever made, the single cylinder engine is exactly as it sounds, one cylinder. The single cylinder is its own engine configuration because by definition it cannot be an inline, V-shaped or W or whatever because it doesn't have multiple cylinders arranged to make the other configurations. So therefore please don't call it a V1, I1. I hear I1 a lot. It is not an I1 because how can you call, like, think of inline skates. If I just give you a wheel and put it on the bottom of your foot, that's not an inline skate because it's just one wheel. You have a Heeley. You have a Heeley, if that even. We call inline skates because they have multiple wheels in line with each other. So using that example, that's why inline engines are called inline engines, but a single cylinder is called single cylinder still. Single one is fine. Thumper is also an alternative. Despite being the first piston engine ever created, they are far from extinct. And while it is certainly rare for any modern car to make use of single cylinder engines, they are still widely used for private transportation and personal use by the rest of the world, which predominantly uses motorbikes. The most sold vehicle to date is still the single-cylinder Honda Super Cub with well over 120 million units sold. In fact, there are several motorcycles that outsell the highest sold car ever. And I hope that really puts into perspective how little the rest of the world uses cars for personal transit. Whether it's a Vespa or a Royal Enfield, many commuter-styled scooters or motorcycles used globally are single single cylinder engines. The main advantages of a single cylinder is how easily they can achieve an excess of 100 miles per gallon due to their simplicity, low weight, and efficiency. They do have a very noticeable downside, which you can probably guess, is that they're not very good at high RPM power output because it's very difficult to balance a single piston on its own because there's no other pistons present to cancel out its vibration. So as a result, single cylinders have found and dominated their niche, simple engines meant for commuter vehicles. The Royal Enfield in particular is around 20ish to 25ish horsepower. I own one personally, gets over 100 miles per gallon. Love the bike, looks great. Personally, I like the thump of Royal Enfield specifically. Never a huge fan of some scooter engines. I do know that they can sound like lawnmowers. The movement of its piston is perpendicular with the ground, which results in it thumping and shaking the ground beneath it. Pretty gentle. I have a cam in mind. This is what it sounds like. I think it's pretty cool personally.
Yeah, don't worry.
Inline engines, also known as straight engines, but don't let Twitter hear you calling it that. The inline engine gets their name from the cylinders being arranged in a line. The main advantage of this layout is its ease of production, since it only has one crankshaft running down the entire length of the engine, and adding another cylinder is as simple as copy and pasting another one from the block. Its main advantage is that it is one of the smoothest and easiest to balance engine layouts, where even odd number layouts like 3 and 5 cylinders can thrive. The 6-cylinder and 4-cylinder variants, meanwhile, are the most common inline engines that we'll usually see. Don't ever let your mom tell you that nothing in the world is perfect, because mathematically the inline 6 is actually perfect, being the most perfectly balanced engine in existence. They're both balanced horizontally and vertically, resulting in the most buttery smooth power delivery and acceleration feel of any other engine ever created. The inline 4, meanwhile, is mostly balanced while still being very affordable, which is why every economy car ever decides to make use of it. There was a time where we used to make even larger inline engines like inline 8s, but what ultimately did straight 8s in was just how long they are. So basically, you have something that takes up the same space as a V16 engine, but only being half of a V16 and less than half of the performance. That doesn't take away the historical significance of us originally making these. I think they're super lovely long boys. I mean, just look at these phallic mother truckers. But yeah, try imagining fitting one of these inside of modern day parking spaces. Now, of course, if length isn't a concern, theoretically you can just keep adding cylinders at the end of an inline engine, because mathematically an inline 9, 10, and so on can just be balanced just as properly for the most part. As a result, the inline engine actually holds the world record for being the largest displacement engine in the world, and really just the largest engine in general. Is an inline 14 that is used by a ship, and it's at 1,820 liter engine. Just kidding, that's actually per cylinder. It's actually 25,480 liters. So for the Americans watching, here's a better metric that you're gonna understand. It can fit 3,640 Corvette Z06 LS7 engines. Ain't that some freedom units? Also, if you're interested in these super quirky engine layouts, make sure to subscribe, and more importantly, check out my shorts. To all the car guys who are constantly asking where the car content went, if you haven't watched my shorts yet, then you're absolutely missing out. Please go check them out. I've got a ton of videos on these funny little engines that I find throughout history, as well as other just funny car stuff. V-type engines. The V-type configuration is the most iconic style of multi-cylinder engine. Like most engine types featured in this video, it gets its name from the shape that it makes, more specifically the shape they make when viewed along their crankshaft. But that's not going to stop people from calling their inline 4 Honda's manifold a V4. Seriously, that's not the V we're talking about. That's not anywhere near the crankshaft, so please stop calling these V4 engines. The V-type engine is more compact than an inline layout, but for most cars, they have enough space where they can still fit 4 or 5 cylinders in line. It's only until when you hit 6 cylinders do a lot of manufacturers start making the choice of going V6 or inline 6, both of which are great engines. Now, the reason motorcycles will still use V4s, unlike cars where no active production car uses one, is because motorcycles actually do care about the compactness of having two cylinders versus 1, 2, 3, 4. So they'll go to the extra effort of all that extra engineering. Popular V-type layouts include V2s, also called V-twins, V4s, V6s, V8s, V10s, V12s, V16s, V18s, V20s, and V24s. Why did we skip over 3, 5, 7, 9, 14, and 22? Well, for the odd numbers, we skip them because V-types have 2 cylinder banks, unlike the single banked inline. This means that V-types will work best if they have an even number cylinder layout, because they obviously want the same amount of cylinders on each cylinder bank. Yes, you could make odd number V layouts like the V3 and V4, V5, but they'll never be balanced as properly. However, because it's also a super small cylinder count still, they can kind of get away with not being perfectly balanced, which is why some manufacturers like Honda will still make them. Now, when it comes to numbers like 14 and 22, mathematically, these numbers are significantly more difficult to balance, and trust me, this time the consumers will notice because it will vibrate their teeth out. That's how hard it is to balance these engines. These two numbers, for very drastically oversimplified purposes, do not divide evenly into 360 or 720, and these both represent 2-stroke and 4-stroke. Is essentially going to make a ton of vibrations, and this can obviously affect performance, comfort, and reliability. That's not to say that V14s don't exist. We do put them in massive ships because they don't care about vibrations, because they're a lot heavier than a car, and they're also floating in water, which helps dampen the vibrations. Of course, for cars that are much smaller than a ship and also driving on land, a V14 powered car would probably rumble people's teeth out. V engines are perhaps the most diverse sounding engine, mostly due to the fact that they're just so popular, so you'll find any variation of a V engine from basically every single manufacturer in the world. These various angles that these 2-cylinder banks can be arranged in can actually drastically change the sound of their engine. For example, here's a 45-degree American V-twin. Sounds noticeably different from a 90-degree Italian V-twin. This is in spite of them all using the same cylinder count. This can also further be changed by the type of crankshaft they use, like cross-plane V8s versus flat-plane V8s, a very popular example being like older Corvettes versus modern Ferraris. The V-type engine's main advantage is that it's likely the most compatible engine layout for any sort of forced induction. That's why you see a lot more twin-turbo V8s or supercharged V8s, as while you can still twin-turbo an inline engine, it's usually better to just do one big turbo for them because they only have one cylinder bank. But before I get carried away yapping about forced induction, I actually do want to show you what I'm talking about using my Minecraft build. So as you can see here, the V-type engine has 2 cylinder banks that are split apart. If you look at the very top of them, you'll see their intake manifold, and this will usually be replaced by the supercharger if you decide to place a supercharger. So superchargers will sit nice and neatly between the 2 cylinder banks, allows for fantastic cooling. You could even put an intercooler on top of it, so it's a very efficient layout. If you choose to twin turbo V-type engines, then as you see here, we have 2 separate header systems for each exhaust scavenging on each side. So each cylinder bank has their own set of headers essentially, so just don't worry about the technical jargon, just physically look with your eyes. Here's the V shape, here's the 2 headers, here's the intake. Now you know air come in here, air combust here, air come out here. So as the air comes out from the side, you can add turbos on either side. So manufacturers have gotten really smitten with the V-type engines as of recent because as emission regulations get stricter, turbos and superchargers are usually something they turn to subvert past those laws, and V-types have been their go-to. Moving on, we have the W engine, and the W engine is kind of weird. No, that's not why they're called Ws, but it may as well be, since modern W engines don't actually resemble the letter W. Let me explain. So the originator of this name comes from a 3-bank design in the early 1900s that if you do stare at it from the crankshaft, just like with the V-types we talked about, it does actually create the letter W shape, hence the name. Now, Porsche is currently designing a concept for a 3-bank true W engine that will feature a whopping 18 cylinders, but because it's not currently produced yet, I can't use it when referring to modern W engine. Regarding a lot of modern W engines that actually have been produced and currently exist in this world, not as a concept, the Volkswagen W8, W12, as well as the Bugatti W16 are weird in the sense that they resemble more of a chunky V shape when viewed along their crankshaft instead of the iconic W shape. The most overused and absolute false piece of information that used to circulate on Millennial Car YouTube is that the Bugatti's W16 is actually just 2 V8s that were combined together, and this is completely wrong. It's totally false. it's actually just a really chunky and staggered VR configuration. So it's not two V8s that are put next to each other or welded together like everyone makes it sound like. Let's just go back to Minecraft again. So to better visualize the differences between the 3 and 4 bank designs, here in the 3 bank design, as you can see, it makes a very recognizable W shape. So when we look at the 4 bank that I've built here, you can see that it actually just looks like a very chunky V when you view it along the crankshaft. And if we take the cylinder heads off, we can actually see the cylinders underneath are staggered, making it more of 2 conjoined VR engines. And unironically, these Minecraft builds are helping you guys better visualize the engine shape. Let me know if you appreciate them. I know for a lot of newer car enthusiasts and non-car viewers who somehow stumbled on this video, you may have heard these letters and engine configs your whole life, but never actually knew what people were referencing when they said V4, V8, or inline 6, or W16, or so and so forth. So these builds, I completely remove all the excess intake, exhaust, electricals, cables, fuel lines, and all the other routing that usually obscures the view of an engine. For example, if I told a non-car person to look at a Mustang's engine bay and tell me why it's called a V8, they probably wouldn't be able to find the V shape, because understandably, with all the stuff on it, it doesn't really look like a V until you take all the stuff off and you go, oh, that is a V. So I'm hoping that these oversimplified builds give like a good representation, and also it's just for audience retention, because I hate to say it, I think more people these days are probably more familiar with like Minecraft than with like actual engine pictures, so this probably helps in that way too. Anyways, since we are talking a lot about VR designs, I gotta talk about them, don't I? VR engines. So what happens if an inline engine refuses to grow another cylinder bank and become a full V-type engine? Well, you get the VR layout. It's a staggered cylinder design that mixes both aspects of inline and V-shape engines with double the benefits. I'm straight up kidding, because it actually performs more similarly to the forgotten middle child who's sandwiched between their overachieving older sibling and their super adorable younger sibling. They remain forgotten to time, unloved, and even disowned by the family. Regarding VRs, even Papa Volkswagen has finally disowned their design in late 2024. VR engines struggle to have the ease of maintenance, low cost of production, and perfect balancing that their inline brothers have. They also aren't as receptive to forced induction as their V-type brothers are. The only reason we made them in the first place is in a world where forced induction didn't become as popular as it has and emissions didn't get as strict as they did, the VR engine actually makes a lot of sense. When it comes to just naturally aspirated power, meaning no turbos, no superchargers, no forced induction, the VR design is actually basically almost as compact as an inline engine, but it makes the same power of a V engine of NA equivalent. Now, if you do add forced induction, you can still turbo and supercharge a VR, and while I do admire the hell out of the engineering feat that this accomplishment is, factually speaking, we just have to talk about the numbers, because the power just isn't as good relative to a twin turbo V6 with probably double or even triple the horsepower when pushed at its limits, while still having less complexity, better reliability, and more fuel economy. So when you think about it from manufacturer perspectives, V-types are cheaper to make, and when you think about it from consumer perspective, V-types are cheaper to maintain. And when you think about it from the lawmaker's perspective, V-types are also more easy to get emissions friendly. So the VR engine wasn't wrong for existing, it just came with an advantage in a world that no longer really needed that advantage, so to speak. But just like most unloved middle children, it's only till after their tragic passing do we realize that they were actually the ones holding the family together like glue right down the middle. The VR engine walked, so its W16 Bugatti brother could run. Fly high, VR engines, you will be missed. L-type engines. If there are W engines, then you can bet that there also must be an absolute L as well. Unlike what their name would imply regarding the shape, these do not have a cylinder that is longer than the other, but rather they are just a 90-degree angled V-type engines. So it's basically just the V engine that's laying on one of its sides. So anytime you hear someone say L-type engine or like an L-twin or whatever, they're just referring to this, because I'll be brutally honest here. Look, this video is confusing enough with the whole W's not always being W-shaped and VRs not actually having a V or an R shape. So having L's just not even actually be L's and actually just being V's that are on their side, you know, I'm trying to make this super approachable for non-car enthusiasts. So for the love of God, can we just get back to engine names that actually make sense again. Praise be the X engine. The X engine is indeed in the shape of an X. This time I won't need an oversimplified Minecraft build because the real life X types are so obviously X shaped that there is no way that the most non-car-y, carless carer could ever mistake it for anything else, because you absolutely are seeing the letter X here if you have functioning eyeballs. The X engine's a good engine, an honest one, a dignified breed. It's also discontinued because of gravity. The X engine usually has one or two cylinder banks facing downwards. Unfortunately, whichever cylinder banks are facing downwards struggle with overheating and need added cooling, which means added components, which means added complexity, which means it's going to cost more for manufacturers to make and also mean it's going to cost more for customers to maintain. So as a result, these never really picked up popularity and haven't been in active production in any production cars for quite some time now. Born too soon to explore space, born too late to explore the world, born just in time to constantly watch piston engines go extinct. Because trust me, there's only going to be more as this video goes on. But damn, do they look so fucking cool. Have you heard one? They sound even cooler too, like straight out of science fiction. It's tragic of how futuristic these things look. They unfortunately are only stuck in the past. Now, some X engines do still exist in the modern world, particularly for some small motorcycles, but for road vehicles, X engines have tried to mitigate their struggle against gravity by flattening themselves out to make reaching them and cooling them a lot easier. But at that point, why not just have a flat engine? F engines, also known as flat engines. These get their name for being, well, flat. They are cylinders that are arranged laying down in the flat position. V-type engines tend to be top heavy. Meanwhile, inline engines, if they get too high cylinder counts, tend to be too long like we discussed. So when you flatten out engines, you can get high cylinder counts just like a V-type while reducing the cumbersome length like you would suffer from an inline equivalent. As a result, flat engines became the creation of this kind of compromise. But they do have a distinct benefit as well. Their lower center of gravity makes them great engines for track cars like Porsches or for touring motorcycles like Honda Goldwings. Flat engines allow these vehicles to have more corner stability thanks to having their weight closer to the ground. This is really important for track cars because they want less body roll and less pitching and less diving as they constantly speed through the corners, and this is why Porsches have chosen to use flat engines. For huge and touring focused motorcycles, you really learn to appreciate the flat engine's design because unlike a car, you're actually sitting atop of a motorcycle, which means that you, the rider, are responsible for the vehicle's weight and balance. So you absolutely notice the lower center of gravity more because you can take two 800-pound motorcycles like a V-twin bagger versus a flat engine bagger, and despite them both being the same weight, you're going to notice how the flat engine bagger will be a lot easier to manage. Anyone who sat on a Honda Goldwing versus a Harley Davidson will attest to this fact. I was really shocked when I sat on Goldwings and even demo rode a few of them that they genuinely feel more like a 600-pound motorcycle because 200 pounds of the engine just feels like it disappeared into thin air, and that is an engineering marvel. Boxer engines. Boxers are a variant of flat engines, but not vice versa. You've probably heard that all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. This is exactly true for boxer engines. All boxer engines are flat engines, but not all flat engines are boxer engines. Do not mix this up. Do not reverse that phrase. Do not interchangeably switch their terms. They're two different engines, but a boxer is a subcategory of a flat, but a flat cannot be a subcategory of a boxer. So if we use Minecraft once again, you'll see what I mean. So if you look at the movement of these boxer pistons, you'll see that they're punching at each other, kind of boxing. A flat engine, meanwhile, will have the pistons tug together, and this is usually due to them sharing a single crank pin. So watch this area right here in the middle to see what I mean. So if you look at the boxer engine, like I said, they're punching, they're boxing, they're coming together into the center. If you look at the flat engine, you'll see that they're actually on the opposite ends of each other. If one is at the top of stroke, the other piston is at bottom of stroke. So it's almost like they're playing tug of war with each other instead of boxing each other. But tugger doesn't exactly have the same ring as just calling it a flat engine, so that's why they're just called flat engines. But back to boxers. So now that we know the difference, boxer engines are most commonly used by companies like Subaru. They use them in a lot of their cars, most notably the WRX BRZ, but they can also be found in some BMW motorcycles, base model Porsches, and the Toyota GR86, which is just a Subaru collaboration, so it's technically just a Subaru as well. Kind of neat though that we can also name engines on their movement aside from just naming them based on what they look like. And the main advantage of boxer engines is that they're fan-freaking-tastic for off-road vehicles because they also have the great low center of gravity. They also have a more unique sound, a more chunky sound compared to a flat engine, whereas a flat engine will have a more sporty sound. This is all just preference at that point. Like, if you choose either a flat or a boxer engine, you are going to get the benefits of a lower center of gravity. Back to letter named engines though, the H engine. No, your Subaru H4 or H6 is not an H engine, they are boxer engines like we just discussed earlier. We no longer have any active production H engines in any automobile. H is just the name of the internal company designation that Subaru gave those engines. To really drive my point home, Ford calls the code name or internal document designation of the V8 inside the Mustang a Coyote, and I promise you, my Ford Mustang does not have a coyote dog that's inside the engine generating my power. For example, a Corvette engine has neither an L or an S shape in it, so H here is just the code name of the engine, not its actual engine configurations. Subarus have boxer engines. Now that we got that out of the way, H engines get their name for, well, looking like an H. They are basically two flat engines that are laying atop one another and thus forming the letter H. Surprisingly, they are extremely compact, more so than V and even W configurations. We fit H16, yes, that's right, 16 freaking cylinders into tiny little race cars. And wait until I tell you about the H24 engines that we've also made and fit into small planes. Meanwhile, we still struggle to fit V8s and even V10s into most cars, and most non-car people still don't know that V12 Lamborghinis don't actually have trunks anymore because their V12 is so massive, it takes up the entire mid to rear area of the car. V16s as a result are even longer and even rarer. They're currently about to be produced again by Bugatti. Now that we've said that, I hope you understand how impressive it is that an H16 can be so compact and fit that many cylinders into a small space. So why did they get discontinued then? Well, turns out too much of a good thing can still be a bad thing. If you really think about it, we usually are more than good enough with 6 or 8 cylinders for most cars. 10 and 12 is usually only for exotics. And by the time we do want 16 cylinders, we do have W layouts, or customers just actually accept the fact that the car is going to be a bit quirky, because that might even be part of the desirable purchasing experience of a V16. Basically, we never actually needed something that was this compact, so it was speccing too high into a talent tree that was no longer relevant for the current meta. So I hope that better explains it for the gamers out there. And too much of a good thing, like I said earlier, can still have some bad things following it. Being this compact, it has a very obvious downside, being that it overheats very easily because all of its cylinders are way too close together. It's also really hard to cool them and really hard to wire them and route them and get fuel lines to them and really do anything for them because, again, they're all way too close together. So it's a lot of complexities involved. A lot of really small and really fine-tuned parts need to be manufactured for them, and basically there was way too much complexity involved in such cramped spaces that this negatively affected reliability and of course parts replacing for consumers. As a result, a lot of companies just decided to forgo using them and instead stuck to using V and eventually modern W layouts instead. Anyways, that's it for this video. We finally made it to the end. Just kidding. Oink oink, psych psych, mother trucker. Here's the brat monster. It's the rotary, baby. I gotta stop putting the rotary at the end of all these videos, but then again, I kind of have to save the best for last for audience retention. I swear if anyone that comments below is asking, but Bladed, where's the Mazda rotary? Reply to them and call them a wankle wanker for not making it to the end of this video before commenting. Much like the Boxer, it's named after the movement instead of the shape, because if we named it after the shape, we would call it a Dorito, and honestly, it's kind of funny. In fact, we do actually call these engines Doritos as like the slang term. So the rotary engine, believe it or not, is even more compact than the H engine design. And you can probably see where we're about to go with this. So the reason that they're not discontinued. We've made them recently at least, and then Mazda has confirmed to bring them back, but it actually went full circle where, hey, they kind of cooked. So rotary engines have a few stark weaknesses. The most notable ones being that they're horrendous for emissions, which really pisses off lawmakers, and that they're not that good on miles per gallon, which is disliked by obviously the average everyday commuter. Obviously car guys will put up with less gas mileage, but to actually be successful as a car, you have to obviously sell it to the normal people as well. And they also blow up apex seals. And if you don't know what an apex seal is, just bless your heart. I hope you never have to know. The advantages though is the rotary is super simple. At the end of the day, it's a little Dorito bouncing around in a chamber, and it is high revving, very compact, like I said, and very lightweight, which are very desirable features for high performance sports cars, which is why we use them for high performance sports cars. And unlike all the other JDM cars to be affected by cloud, I'm still laughing at how the entire Mazda RX series is somehow the only one that hasn't shot to the moon, because this gentle parenting broccoli hair generation was not ready to own a rotary engine that beats more sense into them than the dad that they never had. This is not a car for the weak. This is not an engine for the weak. You have to love the rotary and it will love you back. If you try to treat it as just a car, then it will treat you as just a wanker, and it's going to proceed to blow itself out of spite until it finds an owner with deep enough pockets and even deeper conviction to put up with it. Circling back to its compactness, what made the rotary engine still survive to this day over the H engine per se is that it is so ridiculously compact. We now have hybrids. So before hybrids were a thing, this is never something that would have crossed its path normally in the past. But since we're moving towards electrification, we realize, yo, this thing takes up so little space in the engine bay, we can actually hook it up to a hybrid, to an electric motor, and make it a hybrid engine. And guess what I talked about earlier? The rotary struggles with MPG and struggles with emissions. Guess what happens when you make it partially hybrid? You can actually pass those emissions and you can actually get better MPG, which is why the rotary is hanging on by the skin of its teeth and still around to this day. Now, before we close this video out, I do want to mention some honorable mentions. U-type engines. They aren't actually the shape of a U, and it's just two separate inline engines that are next to each other. But unlike the parallel twin layout, they have separate crankshafts, meaning that they're two entirely separate engines. They're just linked to a single drivetrain. So you can probably figure out why these overly complex and underpowered lads did not make it to the modern era. Hybrid engines. Hybrid's a modifier, just like I mentioned with the rotary. It is not an actual engine configuration. Any engine configuration can be a hybrid. You can make a V-type hybrid, an inline hybrid, a boxer hybrid, rotary hybrid, and so on. So this video is about engine configurations, not modifiers. Otherwise, we would talk about turbochargers and superchargers as well, because those also work as modifiers. If you haven't watched my Noob's Guide series, which is basically ancient history on YouTube at this point, I've explained forced induction there. Anyways though, thank you so much for watching this video. This video is a lot longer than I thought it would be. Like this video if you like car engines, share this to your favorite VTuber to react to, and subscribe for more situation updates. I'll see y'all next time. Bladed Angel out.
Oh. Testing time 7 budgets? No. The dumbest theme park in history by Fern. Fern?
Welcome to Action Park, the world's wildest amusement park, and probably the deadliest. Guests regularly get launched off rides. They dislocate their shoulders and lose their teeth, or even their fingers. They break their noses, get electrocuted, and wade in snake-infested waters. There's more beer for sale than there is ice cream. Guests regularly dare each other to attempt things they probably wouldn't while sober. Often, they come close to drowning. On a normal day, the pool's lifeguards have to rescue up to 30 people. Every year, hundreds or more are seriously injured. Emergency services see up to 10 park-related incidents per day. The nearby hospital gets so overwhelmed that the park has to buy them extra ambulances. The park's unwritten motto? No risk, no fun. Safety protocols are basically non-existent. The staff is mostly in their teens, and often intoxicated. And people love it. The park has over 10,000 visitors per day, around 1 million annually. Over the park's 18...
Alright, that's going to be it for the stream. Good luck, fun, thanks for watching.